Hello and welcome to the Unique CPA with your host, Randy Crabtree. We're committed to creating a thriving community of accounting professionals who are physically and mentally healthy, fulfilled, and energized by their work. Our ultimate goal is to elevate the reputation of the accounting profession and vastly improve the lives of those in it. The Unique CPA is brought to you by Trimerit, the specialty tax professionals.
Today, our return guest is Roman Villard. Roman is with Full Send out of the Denver area. Roman has been on the podcast before, which we will talk about. But Roman, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. This is kind of like a second date update, if you're familiar with that show. So excited to chat through that and the last recording.
Yeah, no, so first off, before we even get going, if anybody's listening to this episode and they haven't listened to last week's episode, go do that first. Because last week's episode, we recorded, Roman and I, about a little less than a year ago, but about a year ago, where we talked about Full Send and the year and a half into it and what was going on and what the goals were. So today, we're going to run a week after that one that we recorded a year ago, another episode where we're going to update on what's going on. And so I'm pretty excited because this is something I've been wanting to do, is follow the trajectory path of a business. And yours is a pretty cool one to do this with. So before we do that, I'm going to play a clip from last week's or last year's, however you want to look at it, episode. And this will kind of give the listeners an idea of what we talked about and what we're going to follow up on.
We need to focus everything on providing an excellent client service to our accounting clients today. But we have very big goals and ambitions, and happy to go into detail on that.
Yeah,
if that's
I want to hear it. I do want to hear it.
Yeah, so from a revenue perspective, we're hoping to be at $1 million next year, be at 2.5 the following, and then be at 5 million in the next 5 years. Now, that's great and good. Revenue is a vanity metric. And so it's one of those things where we set that target to incentivize ourselves just from an operational perspective. How do we put the pieces in place in order to build that would sustain at that level?
So $1 million next year, 2.5 the year after that. That's significant. That's a big growth there.
There are some things that could be transpiring that could help us get there, whether it's acquisition-based or some organic growth.
Yep.
But we send proposals out to about 25% of the prospects that we talk to.
Okay.
And it's just intentionally aligning our client base with the types of companies that we know we can serve really well.
Yep.
And those that we can't, we're very happy to pass those along to partners. And so I think with expanded capacity internally, expanded skill sets, we'll be able to do that. And then there's some other service lines that we could look at standing up as well that would also improve that outcome. And the beginning of this year, I don't like New Year's resolutions, but I said, I'm going to post every day.
Wow.
And see what happens.
All right. So, Roman, based on what we just heard, there was a few things that you talked about, and there was a few things that weren't in that clip that we talked about that I want to touch on. But why don't you give us your thoughts on, one of the key things was that we talked about this, hey, we're in a year and a half in. What I remember during the episode that wasn't in that clip was, I think you were just hiring the first two people. Stacy had come on as your partner, and the two more were just coming on. And so from that standpoint, give us an update on where you are now, people-wise.
Yeah, happy to. So at the recording last year, as myself, my partner Stacy, we had an analyst on board, and we were just about to bring on a director of accounting. And she ended up starting on October 11th of last year. And so today, in the end of July 24, we are at 11 individuals on the team. We've grown substantially. We've got like an actual team in place, which is very different.
Wow.
We also have 2 individuals on the data science side too. So we started a data practice and have 2 incredible individuals running that. So I'm sure we'll get more into that, but that's where we're at from a people standpoint today.
All right. Well, so I'm going to jump all over because I'm already excited about this. Because one of the things you said last year were things were transpiring that could help accelerate growth. We didn't even talk about the growth yet. But one of those things you said were, potential new service lines. It looks like you just alluded to that with the data analytics. So what does that service line offering? How has it evolved over the last year?
Yeah, happy to jump into that. Before I go that direction, I'll hit on what I mentioned in the clip in regards to vanity metrics and revenue goals. So at the recording last year, I had this vision of revenue and growth being really in tandem. And we realized at the end of the year when we were going through our 24 planning that there was no correlation between revenue growth and the success that we were looking for as far as the team dynamic, how we impacted clients, things of that nature. And so we actually scrapped all revenue goals going into 2024 to focus on internal operations and what we've coined as our full send formula. So we are tracking to some of those initial goals that I laid out in the last episode. However, they're no longer these North Stars for us. So I can get into more of those goals and what we're looking at in 24. But in order to meet those goals, you got to get a little bit creative. And for us, there were two components to date since that episode that we've jumped into that have impacted revenue that we believe will continue to drive growth. And one of those is what I alluded to in the data science offering. So we built out a data intelligence vertical, meaning we've got data scientists with consulting backgrounds that have come in to design a framework and a service to help our clients build a data environment and a data strategy to help them grow. I'm a firm believer that maybe cash was king for the last 100 years. I think data is going to be king for the next 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so to the extent possible, we want to allow our clients to instill a data strategy as early as possible to help them improve their outcomes alongside of the goals that they have as a business. So there's a lot of nuances to that. The way in which they dive in is so much deeper than what we're capable of on an accounting and finance standpoint. So that's one big lever. The other one that we kind of soft launch and are really slowly stepping into is the full send design side of things. So I partnered with the individual that did our branding and our digital presence online. We launched Full Send Design with the intent to bring better digital brands to accounting firms. So the focus is squarely on, sub 10 million accounting firms and building out a new website, new logo, new digital presence to improve their recruiting, retention, brand narrative, and things like that. So we've done a couple really cool projects to date on that and plan on continuing to help the accounting industry put a better foot forward.
So just to reiterate there, this is a service where you're helping other accounting firms.
Correct.
Nice. This goes to the whole, you and I just got back from a conference. I don't know if you ever heard of it before, but it's called Bridging the Gap. And collaboration, I think, is a key component of that conference. And so you're collaborating with other firms to help them be successful, which is great.
Yeah, that's right. When I reflect on what is my impact, a lot of people say, hey, we're an impact-based company. And I feel like there's often something missing when people say that because there's no direct correlation to what that impact actually is. And so when I reflect on that personally, I'm like, well, what am I actually doing to help this profession move forward? And so now, after having worked with several firms and improved their brand presence, I'm like, okay, this is allowing that firm to reach new markets, to impact their clients more effectively. And so it's really cool to be able to do that. And a lot of people have said, well, aren't you just helping your competition? And in some senses, maybe, but like you well know, in the way that Bridging the Gap demonstrates it, when you have that collaborative environment, when everybody's rowing the same direction, you can have a much larger impact on the industry as a whole. And so that's really our desired outcome.
Yeah, that's nice. And yeah, this industry in general, in my opinion, is very collaborative and wants to see everybody succeed and sharing knowledge and helping where they can. And often that leads to business because, I know you're an expert in this. I don't know this at all. Like today I had a call. Somebody wanted some thought for some reason that I knew nexus issues with a UK company and business they were doing in the United States. And I'm like, well, I'm not. But I'm going to send you to Jordan Goodman because I can't think of anybody better in this profession to be able to help you with that. And so, could I have said, yeah, sure, I could figure this out? But why? I'm not the expert at it. So that's awesome that you're becoming the expert at that design to help other firms.
Becoming the expert in connecting the right dots,
yes.
Because at the end of the day, if we're not just helping the people that we're interacting with and we're kind of pushing our own goals forward via revenue or whatever those metrics are, like, are you really helping them or are you just trying to help yourself?
Right.
And so, I don't know, to the extent possible, we try to put people in the right places to be successful.
Okay, so new service line, data intelligence, full send design. Anything else you added?
Oh, we still have an accounting and finance practice too.
You did? Okay.
We haven't added anything else yet. In the early stages of the firm, we're reinventing ourselves every 3 months, it seems like. And so what I would say is that another element of growth is we're still seeing a lot of demand on the accounting and finance side that has grown exponentially. And so to the extent possible, we're still trying to improve our internal capacity to be able to serve clients more effectively through onboarding rhythms, through our monthly cadences. And so that is still humming along, and we're still making improvements on a day-to-day basis, it feels like.
And then has the client base, the niche focus, stayed the same? Because, and I'll say this wrong, but it was basically funded startup companies. Am I saying that correctly?
I would call them just capital backed in general.
Yes.
We work with a lot of venture capital backed companies, a lot of private equity and family office backed. I wouldn't say necessarily that the focus has shifted, maybe slightly out of venture and more into established capital sources. That said, I think the maturity of our clients has evolved in that because we've hired a really skilled team, they want really complex problems to solve. And so we've gravitated slightly up market into these companies that have multiple entities, really complex manufacturing cycles, things like that, that just allow a little bit more for our team to dig into versus the super early stage infrastructure of building out a QuickBooks or recurring revenue SaaS models.
All right. And I like the fact that you mentioned impact before, and I know you expanded on that already, but I do kind of want to go back to the vanity metrics, because you were looking to hit 1 million, and I don't know if that timeline was 2024. And so we're still obviously, only halfway through 24. But even though this is not something you're really looking at as goals anymore, how are we doing on that standpoint?
We are trending above our forecast for this year, which is exciting. I still need to forecast. That's without any intelligence revenue or any design revenue baked in there. And so I believe we'll be north of our established vanity metric for the year. So all things considered, very good. The challenge that lies therein that any firm runner is going to face as they scale their practice is just matching up the supply and demand. And so one thing that we've done and been very intentional about is saying no to a lot of prospects coming in.
That's great.
But then also really intentionally making sure that as we onboard clients, our team has the capacity to serve them. Because we have learned in several instances that maybe we didn't do enough diligence on the scoping front, and it just led to a much longer onboarding, much more complicated process than we anticipated. And so we're staying very close to our delivery team to ensure that we're onboarding clients at the right time so they have a good experience as soon as they come on board. So that's been something that we've been working through, because sure, we could have time and a half that goal, but that would have been at a significant detriment to the team and our ability to internally scale our operations.
All right. So one of the things you and I have often talked about, and we did touch on it, we talked about quite a bit on last year's podcast, or last week's, again, it depends how you want to look at it, recorded a year ago, was culture. At the time we talked, you were 3 people, 4th just coming on. I know culture is super important to you. In fact, at our conference at Bridging the Gap, you talked about, culture and Gen Z. Mm-hmm. So in this, going from 3 with the 4th coming on board in October of last year and now up to 11, has that impacted culture at all? Or if you had been more intentional about culture, how has the culture aspect of Full Send evolved?
Yeah, I feel like it's really enriched our culture because we have more perspective from our team members who enjoy different things and live different lives and really want to interact with their profession in a unique way. And so to the extent possible, we've tried to implement rhythms in order to communicate our core values more effectively throughout the work that we do. And so I had the pleasure of speaking at Bridging the Gap on building a next generation culture. And a lot of that was centric around how do you create the right rhythms internally via the usage of technology and tools to help you communicate the messages you want to communicate to your team. So looking at things like an internal wiki for your firm, utilizing communication systems that allows a little bit better collaboration, and then building the values into the rhythms of that daily life. Now, it hasn't come without its challenges. Because we do preach this, we also want to practice it. And so my biggest fear is that we're not practicing what we're preaching. And in February of this year, we had to let go one of our largest clients. We received the feedback from one of our team members that they were the antithesis of our core values. And that was like a dagger, like,
Oh man. And at that time we had 5, 6 people. So losing a large client is pretty materially impactful to the
Yeah.
business. Yet we had to go through that conversation and decision as a firm to say our team is more important, their mental health is more important. And so we need to make a decision on this. And so we ended up moving on from this client. But what I took back from that experience was in that transition point, another provider made more sense for this client. And so we were in a position to help make introductions to 3 other firms that we communicated with of like, here were our challenges. We think you may be able to solve them by doing X, Y, or Z. And after we made these introductions and helped transition the workload, the client said, this was the best breakup I've ever been a part of. And so, there's an element of culture that comes through that type of experience too, that really left us feeling good about transitioning that well, but also relieving our team member from some of the stress that was occurring in that relationship.
Yeah, I think what you did in that situation is one of the best things for culture you can do. The people that work with you, know that you have their back, that the client is not more important to them. I talk about culture all the time, and, people are first, people are most important. Clients will be serviced if your people are happy.
Mm.
And so that, I hate the fact that you had to let the firm go. I love the fact that you did it for culture. And I love the fact that you didn't just say, sorry, we're done, that you facilitated the transition to another firm, which I have a good friend who she calls that inviting a client to be successful elsewhere.
Yeah.
But that's it, successful. And she facilitates it like you did. So believe me, I can't wait till next year's episode where I can see what's happening now, because this is exciting stuff. One of the things with culture, and I don't know, did you see our lunchtime presentation on satisfaction within the profession?
Yes.
So one of the key data, so we, just as a side note, we are in the middle of, and in fact, it ends tomorrow, the data collection in a survey to basically find out satisfaction levels and where people are satisfied, where they aren't, who falls into what category, what affects it, just all this data. Ooh, data, we might need your help on this. And one of the key things that came out, and we had 150 already responses when we said this, we're well over 200 now. But one of the key things that came out to me that really bothered me is that only 33% of the individuals working in firms feel like the people they work with know them outside of work. How's that on you at your level? I'm guessing you know a lot, pretty deep information on the people you work with.
Yeah, it's important to us because like we saw last year at Bridging the Gap and John Garrett's sharing on what makes the holistic person is far more than just what we do at work every day. And so we've tried to take intentional steps to get to know our team, to build an environment where that's, to the extent that people are comfortable with, available to share. And so we have a channel in our Slack called the Full Senders channel, and people will share like, hey, I went on a hike this weekend, or I took my dogs out, or I'm reading a book. Yep. And that really keeps this cool energy going. The other way in which we do that is we've got a survey that every team member takes that just gives us information on things like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite candy? What do you feel like you're skilled at professionally that you're not experiencing right now and you maybe would like to lean into? And so it helps us bridge that gap to that personal life to the extent possible. Yeah. And so we want to continue to lean into things like that to help improve that culture piece.
All right. I could talk culture with you all day long, but we probably should transition. You and I actually just did talk, you presented on culture, and then actually you and I sat down for a one-on-one video interview at the conference where we talked about culture again. So we better transition into something else, which is your social media presence, which we talked about last year, and I'd already seen it, but you had made a New Year's resolution, which you said you don't really like those. But the resolution, or at least what you wanted to do, is you wanted to put a social media post out every day. Yeah. And how has that last year of that gone?
It has gone well, I suppose, from going into it without any concrete goals besides trying to educate, inspire, and encourage others. I didn't really know what outcome I wanted. That said, I believe that sharing opinions and thoughts in a public domain and kind of building in public in a lot of ways of what we're doing here at Full Send has just opened up the aperture of particularly other accountants and other firm owners to see, hey, like, that's accessible. I can do that too, or help inspire somebody. One of the coolest things I saw was a post yesterday that somebody tagged me in, and it was a picture of their family whitewater rafting. And it was a quick little story about this woman whose son could jump off of a cliff, I don't know how tall it was, maybe 6 foot cliff. And he was really scared to do it. And they pulled the raft over. He's up at the top of this little cliff, jumping into a pool. And she just says, "Go full send." And he jumps off and just, like that type of energy and ethos. And I've not met her, but for her to share that and say that it inspired her and her family and her son to do something really cool, like that reward is greater than any material client or revenue that comes out of the social media game. So like, it's just so cool to see that. And I'm glad to see that other people have gleaned something from my posts over the last 2 years.
And I'm going to get to a highlight of the social media presence in a second. But I remember last year you talked about your posts were kind of, I may get this wrong, but twofold. You would post specifically for the accounting profession, and you would post for, client based. Yeah. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think I framed it in the sense of serving two masters last year, in that I've got my target market, the startup land, the capital backed companies, and then this accounting segment. And what's funny is all these accountants have just kind of latched on to what I post, and the message seems to resonate far more with accountants. And so that said, I'm leaning a lot more into the accounting space to create impact on my posts on LinkedIn there. And by nature of my involvement there, it kind of establishes a degree of thought leadership in our industry that still has an impact on the target market. But the messaging has certainly swung more towards the accounting CPA industry side of things, which has been really fun and rich to see come to life at conferences and things like that.
Yep. All right. So one of the really cool things that I was excited about at our conference is we did an award show, but we had a one category, which was social media influencer in accounting. So talking about one part of what you do on social media, and you were the winner of that award. So congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thank you. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the award ceremony, but it ended up being quite fitting as I got to accept the award via recording a video that was played at the presentation. So that was very special. It was very humbling to receive that. And I shared on social media, hey, I'd won this thing. And I was really excited about it. And one of the things that in some ways I'm most proud of is that an individual who I've come to know over the last 2 years commented on that post and was like, what I love about your post is that who you are in person is exactly who you are on social media. And I don't know, I take a lot of pride in that there's not two sides of me. That's purely just my thoughts and opinions. And, I want to have dialogue about it. And so it was very humbling to receive an award nominated by peers too. It's pretty special.
Yeah, it was, believe me, it was fitting, an award. And I don't know if you saw the video that they played. They actually had you, I don't know what the word is, on, a cell phone. Yeah, frame of a cell phone out there talking. So it was, I'm assuming our videographer did that, but it was really cool that they did it that way. And people commented on that, how nice it looks.
I was boarding a flight when that happened, and I had a dozen or so people text me and text pictures and send a video of that. And so it was super cool.
Yeah, well, again, congrats on that. All right, so one of the things that when we talked last year was looking forward, what we're going to do, what the plans are. But there's always a monkey wrench that gets thrown in somewhere. Was there an area where you just didn't expect, that you had to pivot, that you had to transition, that maybe threw you back a little bit, but then you recovered? Anything like that happened in this last year?
I feel like that happens on a daily or weekly basis. There's always something. That said, from a big picture perspective, we had to take a step back to understand, like, how do we want to design a service delivery model that's scalable, that serves our clients well and serves our team well? And so at the beginning of the year, Q1, we really focused on putting a plan in place to build a team really well versus like that ad hoc hiring for the client need that we have today, but really looking at it through the lens of what do we need today, but also tomorrow, and what does that look like 6 months from now? And so we actually have a roadmap now of what our hiring looks like, because we're able to have a little bit more control over client acceptance, because there is that demand. It allows us to plan more strategically. Whereas last year, I think we just got into some pickles where it was like, oh no, like I've got to jump in and like really step on the gas when it comes to this client work. Same with Stacy diving into client work. And so we're having less and less of those moments of like, oh crap, we need to dive in to get this thing done, more methodically walking through that. And that's a function of us building out this internal full send formula, which we hope to share more broadly here at the end of the year, because it's a pretty impactful exercise, particularly with the data component.
And now it just came to my mind. There's a couple other things that we have to talk about, because we actually, last year, you were just about to go to your, I think it was called the Full Send Fall Bash. Do I have that right?
That's right.
So we talked about what was happening there. I need to get an update. How'd that go?
So yeah, our fall bash was, I believe, the day after we recorded last year. And I didn't know what to think. I'm not an event planner. I just threw an invite out, and we had a bluegrass band, we had a food truck, we had about 150 people show up. And all of this was centric around providing for and donating to our nonprofit partner, First Ascents. And it was just the most fun, enjoyable, like everybody just had such a good time. There was no agenda besides supporting a good cause and enjoying one's company. And so it was a massive success. We raised over $5,000 for a nonprofit partner,
Nice.
which in our first year of operations, we felt pretty good about.
Well, the goal that I recall was 2,500.
That's right.
So you doubled that, which is great.
Yeah, we doubled our goal. This year, we have our fall bash on September 26th, and we will have a similar setup, but we're going to bring in some sponsors. We're going to bring in some folks to make it a little bit bigger of an impact generating event. And so I am in the process of planning that right now, which I'm over the moon about.
Yeah, I'm looking at my calendar just to see if when the invite comes, if I can make it. What was the date?
September 26th, Thursday.
I will be in Boston. So sorry, I'm going to have to RSVP no.
That's all right. You can still donate, and the charity will appreciate that.
All right, we will do that. And then another thing, which I should have asked you about when we were going over culture, but something else you did recently, which ties into culture to me for sure, was a company retreat. And tell me why and how that went.
Yeah, so we had 2 full days of a retreat. The intent really being, hey, let's get the whole team to step back from the day-to-day, gather feedback on what things are working well, what things need improvement, and then where do we need to go tomorrow to create a better environment for our team. And so it really allows us to converse around these issues. So the first day was all about how do we serve clients? Who do we serve? Really digging in on that, the core competency of our service delivery. And we came out of that session, structured session, like sticky notes everywhere, in a very cool location. Stacey and I came back with like, okay, we know that there are 3 things we need to focus on right now that were maybe outside of what we were originally focusing on. And so really excited about that. That was our hackathon type day where everybody is supporting breaking the system in order to build it back better for themselves and for our clients. The second day, we started out with a really nice hike in Boulder, and we just spent the entire day outside. And this was all of the culture component, the team component. How can we build a better environment for you, for our team, as it relates to benefits, to flexibility, to how we communicate? So we walked through all of these things, and I think we probably came out of the second day with more actionable takeaways to help improve our team's personal outcomes through what they're doing here at Full Send. And so there's a lot of work to do, but that just as an ability to step back and tell our clients, hey, we're taking 2 days off to focus on building something better for you, I think it was a really great use of time to help instill more structure for the future.
I love it. We do a retreat twice a year, although unfortunately this year it's only once. But those types of things will be what we discuss and just getting to know each other and just building the community and the culture building. So really, honestly, everything you're doing, I'm loving. So I can't wait to talk about what's good in the future. But before we do that, anything you wanna that we missed on what's happened this last year that you want to recap?
Gosh, we talked a bit about the social media side and the unintended outcomes that have come out of this building in public persona. And it's just amazing to me how communal and desiring for peers in the industry our local community is in the accounting space. And so I've just been so motivated and inspired by everybody, like at Bridging the Gap and other conferences that we attend, motivated, inspired by them.
Yeah.
And it's just been so rich, and doors have been opened, and we've sent great referrals to new partners in the industry because of these connections. And so I believe that the tale of relationships of building in public is something that will reap far more benefit than, the revenue component. And so I'm excited to lean further into that.
Yeah, well, you inspire me. I mean, you and I met just over a year ago. It was at Scaling New Heights.
Yeah.
We met online just barely right before that. Like, I think I commented on one of your posts or you on mine that, hey, see you at Scaling New Heights or something like that.
Yeah.
But I had, obviously seen the daily posts and what was going on. And over the last year, even just in person and social media, to see what you're doing, to see what Full Send is doing, has inspired me. So great job on that. Hey, if you can inspire me. No, I'm kidding.
That's really what I'm trying to do. In the back of my mind, it's how do I inspire Randy?
Exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So let's look forward now because we have to do this again in a year. And I'm wondering next year if we'll just tell people listen to the first 2 episodes because I love seeing this journey. So things that we should really look back a year from now to talk about. What are you looking forward right now to this next year? What are things you want to be doing and seeing happen? Goals, not vanity metrics, I guess, but other goals and things you have planned.
Yeah. So from a team perspective, we have another senior analyst coming on board in about 12 days. So we'll onboard a new team member. We'll have around 15 by the end of the year with additional hires. We have a small team in Argentina today, and so we're going to go down and visit them in around February or Q1 next year to try to do the same thing that we're doing here, because as we build out a globalized team, we want to ensure that the culture connectivity remains the same. We'll do that. We will continue to pour into our data intelligence side and build a little bit more infrastructure around that service and really what are the core benefits to our clients. And so I'm going to try as much as I can to remain focused on those things, although I like ideas and it's Stacey's job to tell me no, which she does very effectively. But from a goal perspective right now, we're looking at team and the ability to service clients well. Our goal is to onboard 2 clients per month. That said, we dial that back significantly when we realize that we need a little breather for our team.
Yep.
And so I believe that would result in a healthy revenue bump for next year as well. But again, it's all focused on the team, the operations, the process, and just how much we're getting out of this life that we have.
Yep. And the positive impact you are having
Correct.
in the profession and for your clients. And so we'll talk more about impact next year and going full send, which I had no idea what that was until we talked a year ago. So thanks for educating me.
Yeah, now it's just part of the normal vernacular for you. So hopefully in your day-to-day, you're just sending it.
I'm sending it right now, getting my house ready for sale. So I'm going full send on house prep.
Love it. Love it.
All right. Well, Roman, as always, this has been a lot of fun. We cannot end without asking, what are your personal full send items? What do you enjoy doing? Where your passion lie? And I know we did this last year, so it may be a recap, but we'll see if it changed.
Yep. Potentially a recap. However, I get to go on a 2-week trip to Scotland here in a few weeks to enjoy my personal full send, and that is golfing. And I get to do that with my dad too, which is super special. He's done that his whole life. And so to be able to spend that time with him in a really cool spot and just doing the things that we love doing is going to be a great blessing. So I'm gonna continue to stick with golf here.
All right. And so I know your dad was a professional golfer. Is that correct?
He's won some money playing golf in the past.
All right. And so who wins these days when you're on the course with him?
It's not even close. He still hammers me. But I've got 2 little kids at home and a little bit busier schedule than he does, so I don't play as much as he does.
All right. And then if anybody wants to see what's going on with you and Full Send, obviously you're out on social media, but where would people look?
Yep, LinkedIn, Roman Villard CPA, or at our website at fullsendfinance.com.
Well, Roman, thanks again for being on. Look forward to doing this again a year from now, and excited to see where everything lies with Full Send.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unique CPA. You can find the show notes for today's episode and learn more about TriMerit at theuniquecpa.com. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app. And join us next time for more expertise and insights on the Unique CPA. Professionalproductions.net